be spending a lot of time together, and I want to make sure you know who I am and where I come from. Of course, I can't wait to hear from you and what your story is, but for now, let's go ahead and I'll share my story with you so that you really have a good understanding of who I am, how I started my preschool, and how I can help you start your preschool too. I was a stay-at-home mom for 8 years with my 3 little kiddos, and I loved my kiddos. Oh my gosh, we had so much fun together. We'd go to the parks and we'd play tons of games and things, but I also kind of had to spend some of that time trying to find ways to create extra income for our budget. You know, my husband's job was okay, it wasn't great. There was always this deficit, like a couple $100s that we just need a little extra buffer. So I was racking my brain. I didn't, want to try to find a different job or put my kids in daycare. I didn't really need that. I just need some supplemental income. And I tried a zillion things under the sun to try to make extra money. I tried eBay. That was back in the day. We'd get like a bunch of clothes from the consignment store and we'd fill a bag for $1. And then I'd go home and I'd iron the clothes and I would put them up on eBay. And then of course, maybe I spent 25 cents for a shirt, but then it would sell for $4. Yes, a profit. And of course they'd pay for shipping, etc. But I found myself spending all of my time doing this eBay adventure, and I would ship things and I'd be ironing and I'd be on the computer doing all these eBay listings. Maybe you can relate. Maybe you do something where you have to spend some time doing something, but meanwhile, what's happening to your kiddos, right? Well, for me, they were playing with shipping boxes and coloring on shipping boxes and playing with whatever toys I could find around the house. That's what they were doing, while meanwhile, mom was trying to make some extra money. Honestly, it wasn't that amazing, but for a stay-at-home mom, I didn't really know any different. I didn't know how to do any more. So really, I was making about $100, $200, even one time I made $300 that month, and I was so excited. Like $300, guys, holy cow. That was like my highest month. And I was so proud of myself, but how many hours was I investing doing this thing? It was ridiculous. I literally remember my kiddos coming up to me and I'd be on the computer doing my little listings, and my little ones, my 2-year-old, my 4-year-old were coming up to me saying, "Mom, can you play with us?" And not right now, mommy's working, and away I worked. And I always, to this day, I still feel that guilt. I couldn't really do anything different though. We needed that extra money. I didn't know any other way to do it. And we just kind of had to go through it. And of course, I tried to make up by it, by taking my kiddos to the park and making sure that the time that I did spend with them was super fun. I also tried other things. I tried Pampered Chef. That was interesting. So back in the day, that was another type of MLM. Maybe you know one of those, like Scentsy or other things like that, where you're trying to make that extra money. You're doing home parties. Maybe you're even trying to coupon, and that's how you're trying to put extra money back into the budget, right? You're skimping and saving here and there. But you know that it's just not quite enough, and you're always trying to look for that extra supplemental income. The problem is, though, with so many of these ideas, it's not consistent, and it requires so much time for such little profit. So this is kind of my experience. I did this for 8 years, just trying to find the ways to create income, and I never really hit on anything big. Well, along the way, my kiddos were growing up, and I had a 4-year-old who needed to have some preschool in her life before she hit kindergarten. And so what I did was I was saying, you know what, let's go find you a preschool. And I was going around trying to find a preschool for her, and all I found were daycares with like a preschool class. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? So I walk in and I see, and oh boy, it's daycare, and they're there all day long, and maybe like for a 30-minute period, they bring all the daycare kiddos over to a table and they all sit down and do worksheets. I'm not joking. This is what I found to be the case with my city. And and they called that preschool. And then if anybody else wanted to come to their preschool, they could show up. And for like 2.5 hours, they could go to this kind of daycare, but somewhat worksheety type of area. I didn't want that for my kiddo. I stayed home with my kids. I didn't need a daycare, nor did I want to stick them in a daycare experience. So that wasn't going to work for me. And then I was like, okay, fine. If I can't find a preschool, well, maybe I'll just try to teach them at home. Well, I found some friends, and they had the same predicament. They also wanted their kids to go to preschool, and we couldn't find any options. So what we did was a co-op preschool where we rotated homes. All the kids would come to my house, and there was only like 3 or 4 friends. They would come to my house, I would teach a little preschool class, and we'd have a lot of fun, and then they would go home to their parents, and it was only a couple hours. But the next week, all the kids would go to the other mom's house, and she would teach preschool for a couple hours, and we would rotate between the moms. It was pretty fun. I really enjoyed teaching preschool when I was doing it. It was like, oh my gosh, wait a second, I can have so much fun with my kids for 2.5 hours. Like my time is all with them and these other kiddos, but like, man, we're having fun because I got to come up with all these different activities to keep everything like pumping and teaching them for kindergarten, right? Like I felt really fulfilled in my life at that time. A couple things happened during that period. Number one, I started realizing that the other moms weren't really enjoying teaching their weeks. They were kind of like, oh, it's my turn again. Do you mind? Like maybe I have a sick kiddo, or they started kind of bailing from their preschool time. And so I'd start doing more preschool classes, right? Well, I loved it, but they were starting to kind of be like, oh man, I really enjoy my free time. And not so much teaching is what they were thinking. So I realized this and I kind of internalized this as we went on. So that was really fun. We did that for a couple years, just doing this co-op preschool idea. Well, then my kiddos were growing up, obviously, and one of them was headed into elementary school. And this is kind of where my story takes a turn. So 8 years as a stay-at-home mom, and obviously, you know, trying to add that extra income to the budget. Well, a little backstory, and I'm not going to go into it, but my marriage was really struggling. It was on the rocks. And like I said, without going into much of it, I did not know how to recover. We had so many stressful things going on in our lives. And I do remember one time we had just moved. We were in a brand new house with a brand new car, a brand new SUV. And man, like new, like straight off the dealership new. And we'd been in there for about 5-6 months. And although I was trying to create this extra income, it wasn't cutting it. It was not meeting the needs of our family budget. And the stress was rising because, as you can imagine, new house, new car, and there's a deficit and the credit cards are starting to rise. And the stress is just an all-time high with our family situation. And I remember going into my office at the time and sitting down in the chair. And honestly, I had gone in there because I needed to escape. I needed to get away from my life, honestly. And I sat down in my office chair and this thought hit me. Joy, this is your life and it will not change. Now I thought for 8 years that our lives were going to change, that for 8 years the stresses and the other issues going on in the marriage were going to change. And that realization in that moment hit me so hard that I knew that I was the only one to make that change. I had to make a change because this was our life forever. And if I didn't make that change, our family, me and my children would be in the same situation, and it wasn't a good one. And when that hit me, I had this realization that tomorrow morning, you are going to take your kids and you're going to leave. Now, I got to tell you, it was a Sunday evening, and the thought of me starting out on my own with 3 kids, I hadn't worked in 8 years. How in the world was I going to support these kids, right? I had no job experience, nothing on my resume for 8 years. Where would I get a job? How could I even create a full-time income for these kids? I could only make $200 to $300 a month. I knew that I had to give my kids one last experience. I literally knew I was leaving the next morning. It hit me that hard. I knew I had to give them one last experience to just be a kid, though. And so I took my kids, we went to the park, and I sat on the park bench and I watched them play. Complete, utter joy in their life, right? I mean, they're just at the park having a great day. They have no idea what's going to happen to them the next morning. And I remember sitting in the park bench, this weight on my shoulders, knowing that I had to make that change, knowing that I had to go out. And what are you going to do? How are you going to do this? You going to put your kids in daycare, Joy? You going to do that? They're already going to go through hell tomorrow. You're going to continue that for months, years possibly to come, just so that you can create a full-time income, and they're going to go straight into daycare after they've been, with you for 8 years? Is that what you're going to do? No, that's not an option for me. I thought I only had 2 options. 1, go put them in daycare. Go get a job. That's what everybody tells me, right? That's what everybody would tell me. Or 2, fine. If I don't want to put them in daycare, if I don't want to go get a job, well, then I guess in order to stay home, I have to start a home daycare, right? I guess that's my only other option. But wait a second, that's like 12-hour-long days. And I was thinking about it and thinking, like, I'm already going to be stressed going through this experience. They're going to be stressed. And now I want to bring in like 10 other kids into our like home to have to take care of them for 12 hours. Don't you think my kids need me at that time? How will I be at the end of 12-hour stressful days taking care of everyone else's children, babies, 3-year-olds, 8-year-olds, the whole gamut? How would I be for my own children at the end of the day, or even honestly during the day? I knew those were not options for me. I said, then what? Then what? And I started having this memory coming to me, this memory of, do you remember when you taught preschool with that co-op setting? And the other moms weren't really wanting to teach anymore. You loved teaching preschool. The other moms didn't really want to teach preschool, but they want their kids to have a preschool education. You remember how there were only daycares with preschool options? What if you could create a preschool? I'm getting chills, like just literally remember this experience. Divine intervention, absolutely. What if you could create a preschool for the 3 to 5-year-olds? So you don't have to take care of babies, of 8-year-olds, the whole gamut, just preschool, just the age you like absolutely love and adore. And what if you only taught them for a couple hours every day, just like co-op, right? But because the other moms don't want to be involved, they can bring their kids to you and you can charge them because you are teaching preschool classes to them. I was like, okay, wait a second, this might work. And all of a sudden I'm looking at my kids and they're just elated and joyful playing, and I'm starting to say, okay, I feel like there's hope. We can do this. I walked my kiddos home that night, knowing that of course I would still have a lot of stress and difficulties ahead of me, but I had hope. I had hope for the first time. And I knew that I was making that change and that I had hope. And I walked them home and I put them to bed. And I knew going to bed that night that even though tomorrow morning would be a rough day for all of us, we had a plan and we had a goal. And I had a hope that I could be able to provide a full-time income for them. That is my experience of how this idea came to me. And I hope that you too, as you're in your life, you're here for a reason. You're here because you either want to start your own preschool, you need some supplemental income, or maybe even a full-time income. Or you're in a daycare right now, you're working your own daycare, or you teach in a daycare and you're so tired of the long days and the age of, babies all the way up to school age, and you need a change in your life and you want to transition into preschool. Or you're here because you have a preschool right now and it's not working at its best capacity right now. You thought you knew what you were doing when you started it, but you realize along the way you probably need some help. That's what I'm here for. It's all about making that change and that decision, and you already made that by getting your preschool startup system. So that's a little bit about my story of how I got this idea, but then how did it start, right? Well, you've probably heard me in some of my videos explaining that, man, I was super excited, okay, let's do this. And for the upcoming month, I was all in. This is the thing that was going to provide the full-time income, and let's do it. And I went to libraries and I was searching on the internet. Okay, how do I do this thing? How do I start a preschool? Certainly there's a book out there, right? Certainly there's some website that teaches me how to do this, right? No, there was nothing out there. This was 10 years ago, guys. And if you can imagine the internet back then, there was nothing out there. Everything was for starting a daycare. So as you can realize, the daycare concept with a preschool, completely different. When you do a daycare, you're doing the 12-hour days, right? And your target market is people who work, and therefore they need the full-time care. That's not our target market with our preschool. So if it's not our target market, then how am I supposed to even market to these people if I don't know who they are? Nobody was teaching me this. And for the next month, I was so frustrated. I was writing down all my questions, and the next day I'd start doing them, and I'd get roadblock after roadblock and no, and nobody knew what I was trying to do. I'd call the licensing department, I'd call the city, I'd call the HOA, and they're like, oh, so you want to start a daycare? No, I don't. There's no category for me, but I still had to play by the daycare rules because that's how they rule their world, right? And so I was trying to explain all these different things, and man, my license was taking forever to get. Meanwhile, the clock was ticking down. How is this going to work? I've got 30 days to pay my mortgage that I needed for my kiddos to create that full-time income. It literally felt like a ticking time bomb. The fuse had been lit, and it was time. I was all in. So I just kept trying. I'd put all the questions down, I'd do a couple, and I'd add 10 more questions, because then what, right? I keep asking all these questions and I'm not getting a lot of answers, but there's so much I didn't know. And I'm so thankful that, number one, you invested in this course, because guess what, guys? I've been there and I've helped thousands of women do this as well, and they've created their own successful preschools. So not only are you going to get a huge jump start in your own preschool, you're not going to make the mistakes that I or they made, because we are teaching you the exact way to do it from A to Z. When to do what, how to do it, in what order, right? So that you don't waste time or waste money. So I'm so excited to jump into this. Now, we had that 30-day countdown, right? The fuse had been lit. The bomb was gonna blow up if I didn't start my preschool, if I didn't sign up kids so that I could put money in my bank account. Finally, I got the call one day after I'd been calling so many times, about licensing. Do I have a license? And I had not signed up anybody, because I was so fearful inside that, okay, well, if I don't have a license, then I can't start my preschool, right? And then at the end of that, if I can't get a license, then I can't start my preschool, and then I have to go get a job and put my kids in daycare. I have to start a home daycare, even though I can't get licensed. So I was such a mess. And finally, I had called and I said, do I have my license yet? Did it go through? And the answer finally was yes. Whoa, yes, I'm so excited. But wait a second. I only have a week and my mortgage is due. How is this going to work out? I haven't signed up a single kid. So I was a mad woman at that time. I grabbed my kiddos. We went to the UPS store. Mark, my favorite guy in the world, I know him by name after 10 years. Well, really after the first time, but we're best buddies. Go there and I'm I need flyers. I got to sign up kids. Let's do this thing. And I, of course, had already figured out my times, my tuition, everything else, because I was ready to go, but I just couldn't pull that trigger. And we printed a bunch of flyers. We went around the city delivering the flyers. And as we were delivering them, we took 2 days to deliver them. But in the midst of the very first day, while we're delivering flyers with my kiddos in the car, in a very hot car that we'd have to go get ice cream for, literally every hour and a half to keep them excited, guess what happened? I got my first phone call. Hey, I just got your flyer. Do you have a spot? Oh, it worked. It worked. And I kept getting calls through the entire time that I was delivering flyers. Yes, this concept worked. And it not only works for me, it works for thousands of other women. And guess what, guys? It is going to work for you. You just have to follow my plan. Can you do that? Can you commit to this? If you can commit, I can help you. Everything that you bought, it will help you. It will help you get your preschool started so that you can have this amazing experience too. I remember as soon as I got that call, I scheduled the tours. I had the tours. I signed up the kids. I got their registration monies. We went to the bank and I deposited my very first amount into my bank account. Can you imagine what kind of a feeling that's going to be for you? You're going to have that feeling with me, because you're going to follow my system. You're going to go A to Z, and we're going to get you there. Put that money in the bank account. And then a couple weeks later, we had our very first day. I got my very first tuition amounts, put that money in the bank account. We were set. And the rest is history. That was my very first year. We had 24 students in my very first preschool classes. So fun. And then, of course, we grew it. So what's my story from, my last 10 years? Well, we started our preschool. We started really small with just 24 students. And, of course, my kids got to go to preschool too, right? But then we started growing. Obviously, the more that I learned about preschool and invested in my own preschool and invested in myself with my education, everything just started multiplying. And so we started with 24, and then eventually we got up to 40 to 48. And the crazy thing happened was one year I said, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to enroll double the amount of students that I can even hold. And I want to get another location, because I was doing it in my house, right? Just like you probably, or maybe you want to do it in a church or another building. You want to rent a space. Awesome. And so I enrolled 96 students one year in March through about May. And I was like, I don't know how this is going to work, but we're going to hold preschool in the fall for all 96 students. And I could only do 48 at my house, right? And of course you're saying, wait a second, 48 children in one house? Okay, no. And we're going to get there. I'm going to talk to you about schedules and everything. It's only 12 students at a time in my home, okay? But we grew to 96, and I said, like, we had 96 enrollments, and here's my paper, and I'm like, I don't know where to put these people. Like, I can only do 48 at my home. And we were trying to find a location. And after multiple no's, we finally got the one yes we needed, and we got into our schoolhouse. And now we could not only do preschool in my home, now we could do preschool in a schoolhouse. And guess what? The school had multiple classrooms, and we've only filled up one. So we kept growing. We added a private kindergarten. We added an advanced pre-K program. We added an all-day preschool program. We just kept growing. Eventually, after 10 years, do you want the final numbers? Okay, these like literally blow me away. And you have my book, so you probably already know the final numbers, but my husband and I, we were adding them up after we sold our preschool. I didn't even say that part. We had grown so big, we had filled up our schoolhouse, and it was just the right perfect time that we sold our preschool after 10 years of owning it. But we did, we sat down, I said, I just wonder how much has this little bitty preschool made for our family? Oh, and I said, husband, if you've read my book too, then you know that I got remarried. Anyways, we sat down, we did the numbers, and how many students had come through the school? How many teachers had we hired? How much did we make over 10 years? These numbers like blow me away, because to me, I'm just that stay-at-home mom with her 3 kids. I'm just that single mom with her 3 kids. I'm just that woman who tried to start a preschool and spend time with her kids while creating a consistent income. I'm just that person. I'm not this person who created this massive thing, but I guess I am. So after 10 years, we had over 1,000 students come through our preschool doors and be taught by us. We hired and employed over 50 teachers to be able to give them a supplemental income in their life. And the craziest number of them all is we made $1.75 million in that 10-year period. I was doing the numbers and I'm like, this isn't right. This isn't right. Are you kidding me? Because all you really ever see is just that yearly amount that you make, right? Oh my gosh. It blows me away still to this day that my little home preschool could grow into such an amazing thing. But more than that, I've created this amazing preschool that has blessed our community. And that means more to me than anything. So I'm so excited to keep talking to you about this very exciting journey that you are on. And let's go ahead and get started. Hey, have you heard about preschool in a box? It's literally the one thing I wished I had when I started my preschool 10 years ago. It would have saved me so much time and so much money. Instead, I did the wrong things at the wrong time. Waste of time, I tell you. I can't wait to tell you all about preschool in a box. All the things I wish I had, like curriculum. Oh my gosh, can I even tell you how many hours I spent every single night on Pinterest and Facebook groups and the blogs and Google trying to find activities to do for lessons the next day. Or forms. What the heck was I supposed to give to my preschool families? What was I supposed to include in a policies and procedures handbook? Or marketing. How was I supposed to sign up kids? I had a preschool to fill and I had money that I needed at the end of the month, but how was I going to get that tuition, right? All of those components are inside of Preschool in a Box and a whole lot more. I want to get you Preschool in a Box. I've got an exclusive opportunity for you. When you join our Preschool All-Stars membership, not only will you be surrounded by myself and hundreds of preschool owners cheering you on during your journey, you get an exclusive discount on Preschool in a Box. I'm talking out of this world. When people see it, they kind of lose their mind. They're so excited, ready to grab it right away. I can't wait to get you your exclusive discount on Preschool in a Box. Just join Preschool All-Stars, click the link in the description or go to preschoolallstars.com. It's gonna be like Christmas.